Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I am your host for Inside Boxing Daily, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my new co-host, Hamed Zaman. How you doing, Hamed?
I'm good, Mike. Thanks for having me on, and it's a pleasure to be back talking boxing.
All right, so let's go ahead and let's look at just broke. We've got a fight May the 22nd, and actually, it's a fight that's not that bad, Hamed. We've got Josh Taylor against Jose Ramirez on May 22nd. Ramirez will have his WBC, WBO lightweight or light welterweight titles on the line when he takes on IBF WBA champion Taylor. This is a clash that is, I think, a really good fight. The venue is yet to be decided. What do you think about Taylor against Ramirez?
I think in boxing, probably this is probably one of the best fights to make. I know it's a unification, which in other words is the two best guys fighting to, what's the word, clarify who the number one guy in the division is, and it's gonna put up all the belts. Outside Joshua Fury, I think this arguably might be the best fight. Some people think this might be a better fight in terms of what takes place in the ring. I was at Josh Taylor's last big fight against Regis Prograis. I think that was at the end of 2019 at the O2 Arena. And I had not bad seats. I think I was probably about 25, 30 yards away from the ring. After that fight, I thought there's only one more fight we got to see, and that's Ramirez. And a lot of people thought that was the two best guys in the division at the time. I think you could have made that argument, but right now it's clear that Taylor and Ramirez are the number one and two guys. They're both unbeaten. They're both champions, and I think the sooner this we get this fight out the way, the better, because this will not only let us know who the best guy 140 junior welterweight is, but it'll also maybe tell us who the guy to come up to welterweight could be in the future. Certainly, if it's Josh Taylor, I think he's big enough. I think he's probably maybe bigger than one of the main guys at welterweight, who's Crawford. And if you look at just size wise, I don't know how he boils down to 140. So this is a good fight, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this fight when it's finally made.
Yeah, and the rumors are here whoever wins this would immediately move up to fight Bud Crawford. What kind of chance would you give the winner of this fight against Crawford?
If it's Josh Taylor, I give him a good chance. I was at Josh Taylor's fight, and I know sometimes that doesn't tell you this and that, but it's similar to when I was at Golovkin Brook. I could see things and going to the future with Golovkin and with Brook that I thought they could beat certain guys. And same with this. I think Taylor, if he could get into the fight with Crawford, if he beats obviously Ramirez and does a good number, then I definitely would give him good odds. The thing is, Crawford is also a guy who's come up from the lower weight classes, so it's not as if he's going to be giving away size when he fights Crawford. The thing with this is, I don't know if this is better for boxing. I personally think it is, because what Bob Arum wanted to initially do was line up Teofimo Lopez against the winner of Ramirez and Taylor, which would be a good fight as well. But with Crawford struggling to find opponents, I think maybe for boxing this may be better that Taylor or Ramirez, the winner of that fight, goes straight into a fight with Crawford, because I'm pretty sure Lopez, he looks like he's got plenty of options, or more options than Crawford, after what happened with that Triller whole Perspit situation.
Yeah, so I don't think that Bob Arum's got much say in that anymore. But at least we have a quality fight. And let's talk about a fight that may not be a quality fight. And for some reason, it's on pay per view. Chris Arreola against Andy Ruiz Jr. Once again, I said that on pay per view. There's no word of the price yet. But it's supposed to be on Fox pay per view, April 24th. I mean, this would be a good matchup on Fox TV. I don't even know if it would qualify as a main event on free TV. And when you look at this, you basically got Chris Arreola, who hasn't fought in forever. I think he's 4-1 since like 2012. He's always fat. He's always out of shape. Against Andy Ruiz, who is also, fat, out of shape. Plus, now that he's worth $10 million, Hamed, we don't know, I mean, he's probably going to get fatter. So what's your take on this being a pay-per-view fight?
I don't think it's a bad fight, pay per view. Obviously, it's not a fight that should go on pay per view. Uh, I think they should have saved pay-per-view for Wilder and Ruiz if they're gonna make that type of fight. I personally wouldn't mind seeing Ruiz and Luis Ortiz fight, but if you're gonna make this type of fight just as I was a layup fight for Ruiz to get back, the one thing you can't do is put on pay-per-view. The thing I will say that I did post this on Twitter: if it's a fight that's gonna go say to pay per view and they're trying to test out the price, like say make it $20, $30, $40, then I get the point. Although I still don't think it's a pay per view, although that could be some sort of marketing strategy, I just don't think this fight is pay per view worthy because I don't think anyone should have to pay to see two fat guys fighting. Who, let's be real, are probably barely, both guys are barely ranked top 10. I mean, Ruiz, you could make an argument based on what he achieved in 2019 is the top 10 heavyweight, but Areola, I don't even know if he's a top 30 at this moment, ranked heavyweight. I don't think he's fought for 2-3 years. And the last time I remember him fighting, he lost to the Polish chubby guy, Adam
Yeah,
Konaki.
Konaki, yeah.
He's coming off a loss. He's coming off a loss as well.
Yeah, and when you look at this, I don't think there is anybody there's nobody that can fight either one of these guys that would be pay-per-view worthy. I would pay for this fight if it was $4.99. That's it.
I think it should be on free PBC. It should put it on Fox free TV, and that would have given more exposure to Andy Ruiz. Let's be real: if you market Andy Ruiz and Wilder in the future, or I mean by future, later, I don't know, this year or next year, early next year, you could maybe put that on pay-per-view and say $60-$70. That could do better business than some of the pay-per-views they're doing recently. But if you're going to start putting fights like Andy Ruiz and Areola on pay-per-view and Wilder and Ortiz, by the time you make that fight between Wilder and Ruiz, you maybe have lost fans or you may have not built up that fight like it should have been. So I just think PBC and the guys at Fox have got this wrong, and I don't know if it's up to Al Heyman, but I think this is the wrong move. You could have put this on free TV, and maybe you've got maybe close to 1 million people watching on free TV.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it, if this fight is priced more than $20, I don't think you get 50,000 buys.
Probably not, and I don't know what the incentive is. Are they trying to do it to give money to Ruiz, or are they running short on? I don't know, money, because I've heard a lot of stuff about the PBC and Fox. I've heard Fox wanted to cut ties with the PBC, so I don't really know what's going on with the whole situation. I did like it when they came into boxing and started putting boxing on free TV, but right now it's too many pay-per-views. But I will say one thing for people in America complaining: these are the type of fights we have to put up with in the UK. And I know it's only $20-$30 people say, but like Canelo Yildirim, that was on the zone a couple of days ago. What was it, last weekend? That's the type of crap we got on pay-per-view in the UK. If Areola Ruiz is $80, then I will understand the frustration, because that's not only is not a good fight, but $80 for that, that's too much. That's
Well,
like
if it's $80 for that, Hamed, then the only people that would possibly pay for that would be any of the family members of either fighter that do not make it to the show. Nobody's paying $80 for that. All right, you just talked about Canelo a little bit ago against Yildirim. That was a classic matchup of bullshit. And I'll tell you, I'll give Canelo. He fights about everybody, and everybody says, well, we'll give him this one. We'll give him that one. Caleb Smith, to me, was a gimme for him. And now you're giving him Yildirim, who's even worse than Caleb Smith. And now you're going to give him Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, to me, this is a joke, because Saunders, everybody says he's got the style to beat Canelo. He has the style to beat the Canelo of 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think people really realize how good Canelo has gotten and how much improved he is.
I agree with that, but would you not say Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo is a better fight than Callum Smith and obviously Yildirim? Well, let's not even talk about Yildirim, because I think that was just a layup, a tune-up fight. Like
I would say,
like
I don't think that Caleb Smith and Billy Joe. Who the hell has Billy Joe Saunders beat? Would he beat David Lemieux, who was shot? I mean, don't give it. I mean, this is a joke. I mean, why would we not get Triple G against Canelo? I want to see Triple G and Canelo. And everybody can say, well, Triple G's old. But you know what? Triple G is one of the few guys that's going to stand there and he's going to take the fight to him. Billy Joe Saunders, Who knows if he shows up in shape? Hell, chances are in the next month he'll have to cancel anyways. So Billy Joe Saunders he has not earned the right to fight Canelo right now. Canelo could fight, Andre. He could fight Charlo. He could fight Triple G. I mean, there's a lot of guys he could fight. But right now, it seems to me like maybe he's just trying to get the DAZN contract over.
I see where you come. Look, I kind of wanted to see the Triple G fight in the trilogy and get it over and done with the third fight, 2019. Although at the time I thought Jacobs was the right opponent, I didn't mind the Kovalev fight because I thought it's someone new, and even though that fight ended in a KO, I thought it was a pretty competitive fight. I know that wasn't the Kovalev that fought Ward and Hopkins, and don't get me wrong, that Kovalev against Canelo would have been a mismatch. But nonetheless, I still thought on paper and during the fight it was a competitive fight. With Golovkin, I think the longer we wait, I think the more older he's getting and the more slow he's getting. But I will say this, style-wise, I would rather see Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo than a guy like Callum Smith or a guy like, I don't know, Caleb Plant, who people are talking about.
Come on. I think this. Caleb Plant to me would be much more interesting. The difference is this. Caleb Plant takes care of himself. Caleb Plant has never been beaten. He may not have beaten the greatest competition. Neither is Saunders. I mean, Chris Eubank Jr. and, David Lemieux. I would much rather see Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant is also nobody. I didn't say he did. I'm saying this. I've seen Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders has as much a chance of beating Canelo Alvarez as I do. He's not going to win. He's going to get his ass kicked. And
I think that's extreme.
So you're right. I could probably kick his ass. But when we look at this, I'm bigger, I'm stronger.
I think it could be. I think it could be competitive. I'm not. Look, obviously,
me and Billy Joe Saunders.
No.
Because Billy Joe Saunders is the competitive for him is going to be this. He's going to run for 4 or 5 rounds, and then he's going to get tired because his ass has never been committed to the sport. And he's going to get walked down and he's going to get knocked out violently by the 8th or 9th round.
I hope Canelo knocks him out and puts an end to the myth. But I'm just I'm looking at it from a style point of view. The other day, even with Yildirim, I saw things. I think a good boxer with good feet. Look, Billy Joe Saunders is hot and cold. We don't know which version could turn up. But I do think, look, I'm not really too high on a lot of these guys. I think the only guy going by the eye test that could maybe push a guy like Canelo back is maybe David Benavidez. But that fight's not happening. And out of Callum Smith, Caleb Plant, and Billy Joe Saunders, put resume aside, because I don't think that's not something a lot of people are basing it on. I don't think Billy Joe's going to school him. But I do think Billy Joe could give him a good fight, and that's all we want to see. We want to see Canelo get tested. Now, if the fight ends up and Canelo ends up beating him in a one-sided fight, I will give Canelo full credit, but I do think he'll have to work for it. And even if he does stop him, I do think he will be competitive before that. I just got a feeling that it'll be a competitive fight and Canelo maybe wins. At the moment, I'm thinking about 8 to 9 rounds, maybe that type of fight. And I think it's one of those fights where you see a boxer and a guy who just breaking him down. But I do think that based on style, I just think Billy Joe Saunders might be a better fight than I know Callum Smith. That fight happened, and even Caleb Plant. I have not seen enough of Caleb Plant, and the guys he's been fighting that. I don't think
that's why I would rather see Caleb Plant, though. I have more questions about how good he is. I have no questions about Billy Joe Saunders, and I think the issue is this. I do think a boxer that can punch would give Canelo the most trouble. Billy Joe Saunders cannot punch hard enough to hurt Canelo. We watched Triple G smack Canelo with some shots that would have knocked out most middleweights and super middleweights in history. And Canelo just kept coming. And when I look at that, I don't think Saunders hits hard enough for this to be competitive, because I think the one thing we see with Canelo, when he fought Mayweather, when he was really young, when he fought Lara, guys like that could box, he had a tendency to just follow them. And I think what we see now is we see a lot more movement, a lot more punches to the body, a lot better combinations. He's just a crisper, cleaner fighter. And I think that there's levels to this, as we hear all the time. And there may not be anybody from super middleweight down that can give Canelo a fight right now.
I do think Golovkin in his prime with the one in 2017-18, I would like to have seen that fight, but I personally think he slowed down. I still kind of want to see it to put a chapter on the end, but I do think it'll be a bit unfortunate if Canelo stops him or beats him emphatically because,
Yeah,
I mean, he's 39 almost. Golovkin, I think we're asking for too much from a guy like Golovkin. I'd like to see some of the young bloods or some of these guys like David Benavides, guys like this, Billy Joe Saunders. These guys should be the guys that are testing Canelo. We shouldn't be relying on a guy like Golovkin. But I think that shows how weak a lot of these weight
yeah,
classes
but how
are.
about
At the same
this?
time,
I mean, I watched Triple G beat Canelo fairly easily the first time, I thought. The second time, I thought he won a close fight that could have went either way. I think this. I don't think Canelo fights Triple G because Canelo don't want those problems. Triple G may be older, but Triple G is a warrior. He's going to come to fight. He's not going to back down. He's going to stand his ground. He's going to throw punches, and he hits hard enough to at least hurt Canelo. I think this. I think to beat Triple G, even at this age, you got to be willing to go to war with him. And why do you want to go to war with Triple G when you can go to just slap the shit out of Billy Joe Saunders?
I think Trigger Derevchenko and Golovkin is a pretty close fight, and I do think I know that took a lot of Derevchenko. I do think Canelo is a better boxer overall than Derevchenko. I will say this: I still do want to see that fight. Uh, the third fight, maybe somewhere down the line, later this year. If they can't make it, then maybe I think that's the thing though. Early next year, he'll almost be 40, and I think the older he gets, he's losing less than that fight. I think.
Hey, don't be surprised if Billy Joe Saunders pulls out by the time we get to April 1st,
What
and maybe you
I
see Triple
posted
G
that.
anyways.
I posted that, and I think with Billy Joe, he's that type of guy. I don't think you can compare him to someone like Tyson Fury. I think Fury is much better. He's beaten a guy like Klitschko on his record, and he showed he could take time off and come back and beat a guy like Wilder. I just think style wise, I'd rather see a guy like this where Canelo can answer questions, and rather than going over guys like Yildirim, Callum Smith, guys like Rocky Fielding. I mean, Danny Jacobs, people say this and that, but I think after that Golovkin fight, I don't think he's how do I put it? I don't think he's got back to that level. I think after that fight, I think whatever money he got from the Canelo deal, I think he's lost his hunger. In the Canelo fight, I thought he kind of froze against Jacobs against Canelo, and I don't think he's put it all together. The last time he did that was probably against Golovkin. So that even though he could box a bit, I think a guy like that was a bit overrated. Although I do think Jacobs it's harder than Billy Joe. The thing I want to say is go back to what you said. You said the guy like Mayweather and Lara, Canelo's improved. Now I agree with that, but I think Mayweather at his best against Canelo at 154. Any version of Canelo. I don't think you have to hurt Canelo. I think you just have to have enough pop on his power on his your punch, power on your punch to keep him there, like to just keep
Yeah, but how about
get enough
this,
respect.
Ahmed, I believe this. I believe Canelo Mayweather is a mismatch in their primes because I think Canelo's prime is at middleweight.
No, that's what I just said. If it's at 154, I mean, the last time he fought someone good at 154, you could say Cotto. And I don't know if that was at, well, actually was at 154. That might have been at a catchweight. I can't really remember. But this is what I'm trying to say. I do think Canelo at his best at 154, where Mayweather, that was the highest he fought in weight class. I do think it'd be a lot closer than when they fought. But I just don't think that version of Mayweather, who, and I rewatched that fight a couple of times, was at his best. Mayweather, the way he fought him, he made sure he didn't sit on the ropes and didn't give Canelo any chance. And I know Canelo did fought the wrong game plan and fought probably the worst fight of his life. He's trying to outbox Mayweather. But I'm just saying, style wise, Mayweather was all wrong for him. I think speed, the defense, everything. Now, what I'm trying to say is you'd have to box like that to beat someone like Canelo. I don't personally think Billy Joe Saunders is like that, but
No.
I could see the fight being competitive, and I think you got to fight a very good. You got to box a very good fight to do that. But Billy Joe Saunders is not Mayweather, and he's gonna have to box out of his skin to win. I just think this fight could be competitive. I don't think it's a mismatch like some people are making it out.
It
I
is
think
it
Saunders.
is a complete mismatch because I guarantee you this: Billy Joe Saunders doesn't have the heart.
I personally I favor Canelo obviously. So I don't know. I don't know if there's much to argue about if you think Canelo's gonna win it. I just don't think it's a one-sided fight as a guy like Callum Smith, because a lot of people talk about that Callum Smith fight, but if Callum Smith was that bad and this, that, and the other, Canelo should have taken him out. I seen a guy in there for 12 rounds getting peppered left, right, and center. And Canelo just didn't pull the trigger. I saw that against Chavez Jr. Now, I'm not trying to downplay Canelo, but what I'm trying to see is, to me, he looks like a guy who plays with his food, who's a bit hesitant to get hit. And I've always said this since I believe that when he fought Cotto's brother, when he was 22 or 21, something like that, he's always been wary of what's coming back. And in the Mayweather fight, I think that was one or two fights too early. I think if he took that fight after the Lara fight or the Trout fight, he may have been a bit more conditioned to give up a more competitive fight. But I think if Billy Joe is there after 8, 9 rounds and it's a competitive fight, I do think it could go to the scorecards. But I'd be crazy not to pick Canelo. I mean, Canelo right now looks like he looks like he's not going to lose to anyone. I'd say from
Yeah,
160 to
he
160.
looks to me like a borderline all time great if he continues. And the thing is this, to me, I've seen you mention it, and we'll talk about this on tomorrow's show, but maybe an Andre Ward. To me, the guy that would interested me was maybe go to light heavyweight and fight Beater BF.
I think those guys, Beterbiev, Bivol, would be favorite over Canelo. I don't know about David Benavidez because he hasn't really fought anyone. That's based on eye test. He's the guy to me from 160 to 168. Looks like the guy who could maybe hurt or maybe beat Canelo in those weight classes. At 175. The reason I personally think Andre Ward, because I think there'd be enough money for that fight for Canelo to take the deal. And I think there'd be enough money for someone like DAZN to offer Ward and Canelo to get in the ring. With Beterbiev and guys like Bivol, those are high risk and the reward I don't think is there. And I don't think DAZN or Canelo's team would be willing to make those fights.
Well, how about this?
I would favor Beterbiev.
I think Canelo could beat Bivol. I think he would have issues with Beater Biev. I'm much more impressed with Beater Biev than I am Bivol. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Canelo tomorrow and possible matchups similar to that. Let's go ahead and hit some news real quick. Joe Smith's fight was postponed, which I like to watch Joe Smith fight. He's exciting, but he's supposed to fight Maxim Vlassoff, and that's for the vacant WBO light heavyweight title. But that match has been postponed. Vlassoff is tested for COVID-19. He tested positive, and ESPN was set to televise the match as their main event last month. They will still air it April the 10th. This is a fight. I mean, what do you know about Vlassoff? Does he have a shot against Smith?
I haven't really seen much of the guy. I did hear that he's not a bad fighter. I obviously would have to favor Joe Smith. The interesting thing about this fight, we just talk about Beterbiev. I really do think Beterbiev would be the guy. I mean, Joe Smith would be the guy to give Beterbiev a good fight right now. That's a fight that I think could go either way. In terms of, I think whoever gets chin check first gets knocked out. Joe Smith is a big guy. He knocked out Alvarez. He stopped Hopkins. Those were emphatic and good wins. I think Beterbiev would be favored right now. But in terms of fights against for Canelo, Bivol is a guy, I think he said he could go down to 168. So I'm not sure if he's a fully fledged light heavyweight. Right now, I think we need to see Beterbiev, Joe Smith, and Bivol. Well, the thing is, Bivol and Joe Smith already fought. So if we could see Beterbiev and Joe Smith fight, then maybe the winner of that, which I think if it is Beterbiev, then should fight Bivol. But I don't think Canelo's going near those guys, and I don't really think he has to fight the guys at 175 right now, because if he's fighting the main guys at 168, until that's cleared out, I think we could wait for that, because I personally think he might be a bit too small for 175, and that may be a weight class where he's bitten off more than he could chew. But if it's a guy like Ward, who's not the biggest of light heavyweights, who's in a way some people think he is big, but he's a guy who, let's just say, come up from super middleweight, he's a guy that's not known to be the biggest puncher. I think that's the type of fight that you could maybe make for Canelo. But regarding Joe Smith and Vlassoff, that was meant to be one of the best fights in the bubble, but it got postponed to April. I think if Joe Smith does what he's done in the past, then he should win, and he'll be the new, I think, his WBO light heavyweight champion.
Yes.
And he could be on a collision course with a big unification against Berterbiev, who's also had fights, problems with fights pulling out.
All right. Golden Boy Promotions signed light heavyweight contender Gilberto Ramirez last week, and they are already in talks with the team of world titleist Dimitrov to match them later in the year. Both camps have actually reported this. This would be a solid fight, too.
I think I've heard that Ramirez is going to fight Bivol. So if that happens, that's not a bad fight, I think, for Bivol to stay busy. But Ramirez is one of those guys I think a lot of people have lost interest in. I think he was 39, 40 and 0 or something to top rank, and I just don't think he moved the needle. He wasn't the most entertaining or fan-friendly of fighters, but yeah, I think he somehow wanted to get out the top rank contract, and I think his last fight was on some sort of pay-per-view with, I think it's Fight.tv, which showed the Lomachenko Lopez fight in the UK and around the world. And I think Ramirez, if he wants to get back to where he was in a fight with Bivol, maybe a win over Bivol would definitely put him back there. But I don't know. He's one of those guys I don't know how much trust you have in him. He hasn't really set the world on fire since he's become a champion or whatever when he lost the belt. I think it was a super middleweight.
Hey, I got a good one for you. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. has volunteered to fight Canelo for free at 175 pounds.
I think he scammed the world or the pay-per-view market with that first fight. I think they did 1 million pay-per-views on HBO. I think that's the last we should hear about Chavez and Canelo fight, because I think he was at a catch weight or whatever, and even then he looked dead at the weight. So he's one of those guys I think that just didn't have half the or a quarter of the discipline his dad had, and he's ended up on the road, and I don't think that's something we should take serious.
Yeah, I don't think we should ever take Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. serious. I think that's a bad idea.
I think there was a moment in that 12th round against Sergio Martinez back in 2012 where I think there may have been something, but then after that fight and after the couple of, I think, fights with Brian Vera, he just isn't a guy who takes boxing, I think, serious. And I think Freddie Roach was one of the guys who was used to train him, who said that he's not a guy that you want to waste time with, or he's a guy that wastes time and isn't someone who takes his craft serious. So I don't think the fans even care about him right now. I know he did have a bit of a contingency of fans that were following him, but after what happened with the Danny Jacobs fight, I think everyone has lost interest with whatever he had.
Yeah, I think I lost interest in him a long time ago. All right, we've got Chocolatito and Estrada coming up on the 13th. That's going to be a great fight. The undercard was announced. When you look at the undercard, we got Cecilia Breakhouse against Jessica McCaskill in a rematch. Not a bad card here.
Those are two very good fights and two rematches. I did not watch the first Estrada and Chocolatito fight live. I think it was in 2012 because I don't think it was on a premium network or on HBO. I don't think they were showing Chocolatito's fight, but I've seen bits of it since then, and that was really good. The high octane fight where I think Chocolatito was in his prime, and Estrada was one of the few guys who pushed him. And then I think once Chocolatito got knocked out by Rungvisai, and we've seen Estrada fight Rungvisai, we just seen how good a lot of these guys are who didn't get the exposure early on in his career. Although I think a lot of people do regard now Chocolatito and his greatness and as a top Hall of Fame fighter, but if he can pull back the years and win this fight, then I think this will be probably one of his, if not his greatest wins. Estrada is, I think, the favorite on paper, although he did get dropped in his last fight against, I think it was Quadras. So it's one of those fights I'd say is probably 60-40 in Estrada's favor, but Roman Gonzalez is one of those guys. I think in his at his best, when he puts everything together, he's maybe one of the best boxers, pound for pound, skill wise, talent wise, whatever. He, I've never seen someone who could throw punches like that, combinations in a long time. I think you gotta look back at some of the all time greats, and I think he's a special fighter. But I'm not sure if this is one fight too many at that age, where in those lighter weight classes every year and every pound makes a difference. And I think this could be maybe a step too far, but it should be interesting fight to tell us where both guys are. I think if Strada wins, and I think Rungvisai is also fighting that same day, they probably on course for a collision to have a trilogy maybe later this year. Or if Roman Gonzalez wins, then it'll be interesting to see what happens. But that's a really good fight, and the co-feature is a good fight as well to see where how much Breakers has got left, because she also has had a long career and she lost I think the first time in I think it's almost 40 fights. So that'll be interesting to see where both of the old fighters of the male and female generations are going.
All right, Hamed, we're going to wrap it up for today. You going to be back with me tomorrow?
Yes, back tomorrow. Whatever's going on in boxing, and maybe we could touch on the whole Teofimo Lopez scenario, because I think that was an interesting take what happened, and I think it'll be interesting to hear what you got to say about that as well.
All right, guys, we will be here Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Make sure you check out me and Hamed. Hamed, you want to tell people where they can follow you, where they can follow you on Twitter?
At Hamid's, I think it's triple underscore Zaman, and you could just keep an eye out. I sometimes do write the odd few article for the Grueling Truth as well. I'll maybe be back to writing something soon, as soon as we can maybe find out about the whole Fury Joshua situation. I think that's something that I'd like to write about. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter as well.
All right, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at Grueling Truth. Every day, Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock inside Boxing Daily. Christopher Shelton, our boxing historian, will be back with me to look at the career of Tommy Morrison, 7 o'clock Sunday night. Make sure you check us out then. But for now, for Hamed Zaman, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.